Despite the fact that the scene on the computer screen was painful, Trevor Duncan couldn't look away. Partly this was because he still couldn't believe his eyes, even though he knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was true. Nevertheless, he was looking for some kind of clue, some sign that everything wasn't as it seemed. Another reason was that Trevor felt completely broken and that he had already lost the most important thing in his life. He was suffering so much emotionally that perhaps the accumulation of pain would eventually lead him to numbness, to emotional numbness. The video was clearly filmed on a phone that had been set up in advance to capture what was happening on the bed. Trevor didn't recognize the bedroom at all, but he knew exactly where and when it was. He also recognized the very attractive woman lying half-naked on the bed with a man lying on top of her. Trevor cursed loudly and threw an empty beer can at the screen. 3 days earlier, his wife had casually admitted that she was sleeping with someone when she disappeared for an hour from a party at the home of Donald Bloom, the university president. The party was to announce to faculty and staff that Trevor would be replacing Dr. Welsh as Dean of the Humanities. After a brief argument that caused a real scandal in front of everyone, Trevor went home, grabbed a few things, and checked into a motel. His wife, who smelled of sex, had the audacity to be angry that his colleagues had found out she was sleeping with another man, and in front of everyone. Shortly after he checked into his room, he received a video via email. Trevor and Larissa had been married for 12 years and had a 10-year-old daughter, Josephine. Larissa's pregnancy had been quite difficult, with complications that required an emergency C-section. Another blow for Trevor was that he had hinted several times that he wanted another child, but Larissa had refused, and now she was happily going to give birth to this toad. Despite the fact that Trevor found Hunter unattractive, he had always managed to get involved with very attractive women. None of them were as sexy as Larissa, at least not until that party. Hunter was a good liar, but Trevor couldn't even imagine in his wildest dreams that his wife would fall for it. Knowing that half the campus would find out that he had been cuckolded at his own promotion party, Trevor didn't go back to work. His wife also worked there in the finance department as a payroll manager and was well known on campus. A tall brunette with long legs, a slim waist, full breasts, and a flawless face that was always smiling, she couldn't help but attract attention. Trevor couldn't bear the thought of people looking at him with pity or giggling behind his back. Trevor knew he needed to cool off a bit before making a final decision, but he was already eyeing professorship positions at other colleges. He couldn't imagine himself at GU, where Hunter and Larissa were now a couple. More than the end of what Trevor had considered a perfect marriage, he was hurt by the fact that he would now likely be raising Jo in part. Even with proof of her infidelity, Trevor knew he was unlikely to get full custody. Since he was planning to move out of state, the best he could hope for was summers and holidays with his daughter. If he stayed in Gradestone, he would probably get joint custody, but the thought of living in the same town as her lovers, especially when Larissa started showing up, was unbearable to him. Larissa, her friends, and relatives tried to contact him several times. After her message, "What's wrong with you? I didn't do anything to deserve this," Trevor blocked all possible ways of communicating with her. He even canceled his phone and got a new one with a new number that wasn't listed in the phone book, only under his name. He felt terrible because he knew how much Jo would miss his father, but he couldn't see a way to contact her without running into Larissa, which he wasn't ready for yet. While Larissa came from a large family, with 3 brothers and sisters, both parents alive, and dozens of close cousins, Trevor was practically an orphan. His parents had died within a month of each other before he met his wife in college. He had no siblings or other relatives that he knew of. Furthermore, all the friends he had in town were their friends. This meant that Trevor felt like he had no real support as he was going through hell. He was about to watch the video again, but he had second thoughts and went online instead. 20 minutes later, he found a divorce lawyer and arranged for a free consultation that same day. Horace Derringer was one of those older men who are probably much older than they look. He appeared to be no more than 50, but the various awards in his office suggested that he was probably in his 60s. Nevertheless, there was something about this man that commanded respect, and Trevor felt he could trust him. Before the meeting, Trevor sent him a copy of the email, warning him that it contained explicit scenes. Horace smiled and said that in all his years of working with divorce cases, he had seen it all. "Well, Mr. Duncan, I suppose I owe you an apology," Horace said. "You said this video was taken at a party celebrating your promotion, and your wife came right after and confessed, and then her lover sent the video to humiliate you even more. I've never seen anything like it. Of course, I'll have a forensic video expert take a close look at it, both for authenticity and for any details that might help you or your wife." "Well, she didn't just come down and confess," Trevor said. "She disappeared and missed the president's announcement of my promotion, and I knew right away that she had been having sex. I mean, you could tell by her hair and clothes. I was in complete shock and asked her straight out if she had been having sex. She replied, 'Of course I did.' Then I raised my voice and asked her who with. She looked at me like I was an idiot and said I knew who it was. I said I didn't know and demanded that she tell me who she had just been with, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then everyone started looking at us, and she got angry at me for telling everyone and asked if I was crazy. She seemed perfectly sane on the video, which is surprising. I expected to see signs of intoxication or drug use," said the lawyer. Trevor shrugged. "It was a dry party, and other than caffeine, I don't think Larissa has taken any drugs in the last 10 years. I used to smoke and still drink occasionally, but she's fanatical about her health." Horace shook his head. "Wow, I'm very sorry, Mr. Duncan, but that gives us grounds for a charge of domestic abuse, the way they exposed your relationship to the public. Do you know how long this has been going on?" "I have no idea because there were no signs. You heard how they talked. It must have been going on for more than a day, but she completely deceived me. Everything was fine in our relationship. We had an active sex life, went on regular dates, and even ate all 3 meals together almost every day because we both worked at the university. Nothing changed until she came down from the bedroom after my promotion was announced." She mentioned being pregnant. "Were there any changes in your plans for your family?" Trevor sighed. "I had a vasectomy 5 years ago because my wife had a difficult pregnancy, and I didn't want to take any chances. Since she doesn't use birth control, it was easy for her to plan to get pregnant by her lover behind my back." Horace nodded and cleared his throat. "All right, I'll be happy to represent you. These proceedings always involve a degree of unpredictability, but I can give you the good news and the bad news up front." "Okay. Since you are planning to move to another state, you will not be able to obtain joint custody, and sole custody is highly unlikely. If there were signs of mental stability, it would be a different story. I'm very sorry, but I don't see that. The court will only see a woman who fell in love with another man so much that she cruelly rejected her current spouse. And since there is no fault in our state and you don't have a prenuptial agreement, your property will be divided and you will likely have to pay child support based on your income." Trevor blinked. "Excuse me, what's the good news?" "You strike me as an intelligent man, which is why this is so hard for you," Horace said sadly, shaking his head. "You're not used to being deceived, and these two really pulled the wool over your eyes. I'm sure you realize that financially, you have no chance of coming out of this divorce a winner. The good news is that it won't drag on. Given that your wife is actively trying to conceive a child with another man and has admitted this in front of witnesses, no judge will recommend that you undergo counseling to reconcile, even if she suddenly changes her mind. Of course, you will still be connected to your daughter, but you will be free from your wife. In addition, we can stipulate that a neutral person will be the contact person for matters concerning your wife and will accompany her during visits. In other words, you will not be forced to communicate with your ex-wife. Trevor nodded. I think that's the best news I could have hoped for. I don't intend to talk to her anymore. I'm sorry, I meant after the divorce. You will both still have to attend the trial. And since that could take a month or more, I'm sure you don't want to be separated from your daughter for that long. You'll be free of her eventually. I recommend just keeping your emotions in check and not doing anything stupid like knocking someone's teeth out. I would never raise my hand to my wife. I've never even yelled at her, Trevor said, sounding hurt. I meant your future ex-wife's lover. That video could cause you to have a physical reaction, and that could be used to take away your right to see your daughter. Maybe that's why they sent you the video. I've seen that trick before. My advice, aside from hiring me, is to find a third person you both trust to tell your wife that you're not ready to see her, but you want to see your daughter. For you to have a chance at full custody, it needs to look like you still want to be her father. Of course I want to be her father, Trevor replied sharply, but Horace barely reacted. Yes, that's why I recommend you do what you already want to do. After the meeting, Trevor didn't feel any better, but he officially hired Horace to start preparing to hand Larissa the papers by the beginning of the following week. He was already thinking about how to contact Joe without involving Larissa. Horace's advice about a neutral mediator came to mind, but he couldn't think of anyone he trusted, fearing that they would most likely side with Larissa. In the end, he settled on the Ballos. Jeff and Marjorie were the parents of Tegan, Joe's best friend in school. Larissa and Marjorie hit it off right away and became very good friends. Over the past couple of years, the families had gone camping together and even on vacation to California. Trevor wasn't as close to Jeff as Larissa was to Marjorie, but he trusted them, especially when it came to his daughter. Trevor had all the contacts from his old phone, although many numbers were blocked just in case. He was going to call Jeff, but he knew that he would probably end up talking to Marjorie. She answered the first call. He didn't even have time to say hello before she interrupted him. Trevor, is that you? Where are you? Everyone is very worried. Larissa even called the police, but they don't consider you missing because they think you left her. They're not wrong. I did leave her. What? Marjorie squealed. How could you? They're both crying nonstop. How could you do that? Is it because of another woman? Stop yelling and I'll tell you everything, Trevor said firmly. She muttered a few more expletives, then said angrily, Fine. I guess Larissa didn't tell you the whole story. Only that you brutally humiliated her for no reason and acted like a madman in your boss's house. Trevor snorted. That's ridiculous. I humiliated her? I'm sorry to speak ill of your good friend, but the fact is, my once loving wife suddenly disappeared from a party. I tried to find her and asked everyone, but I had to give up the search because the president was about to announce my promotion. The promotion that was the reason for the party. The announcement was made, I gave my speech, and my wife was nowhere to be found. It didn't escape the notice of all my colleagues who were there. When I finally found her, she looked and smelled like she had just had sex, obviously not with me. What? I don't believe it. Oh, it's true. What's more, she admitted it as if it didn't matter. She only got upset when I demanded that she tell me who she had slept with. That's not like Risa at all, Marjorie said in a softer voice. I thought so too. Then I got an email from her lover, that damn Hunter McPhillip, with a full video of them having sex and discussing their plans to have a baby. Trevor, that can't be true. It must be fake. It can't be, Marjorie began. I could smell him on her. She couldn't have slept with him and not. And what's worse, Trevor paused to collect his thoughts. They talked like they'd been doing this for a long time. She said she loved him. In the video, they claimed they planned from the beginning to announce on my special night that she was now with him. I don't know what to say, Marjorie said, sounding a little shaken. If that's really what happened, I can understand why you want to be alone. All I know is that Risa isn't acting like a woman who would leave her husband for another man. She's physically ill with worry about you and insists she has no idea why you ran away. She's been calling hospitals worried that you have a brain tumor that caused this. Maybe she has a tumor. I won't show you the video if you don't want to, but I swear it's real. Trevor sighed. Listen, Marjorie, I'm calling about Joe. I miss her very much and want to see her. But I'm not ready to meet Larissa. Not yet. I trust you and Jeff completely with my daughter's well-being. Could you please contact my wife and convince her to let you arrange a meeting between me and my daughter? I won't say a word about why we're getting divorced. I just need to see her. Wow, I don't know what to say, Marjorie said. Of course, I'll help you see Joe. She's in as bad a state as Reese is right now. I'm sorry, I'm just in shock that she could do that. I mean, the way she talks about you when we're alone. She's just in awe of you. Well, maybe she's changed her mind. Thanks, Marjorie. Say hi to Jeff for me, and I'll wait for your call. Call any time. I've given 2 weeks' notice and I'm taking 2 weeks' vacation. After hanging up, Trevor began writing a letter to Dr. Blunn informing him of his resignation. Since the university president was only a few feet away from where he had argued with Larissa, Trevor didn't expect him to be surprised. The only consolation was that Trevor wasn't teaching any classes at the moment, so he only had to transfer one research project to another professor. Trevor sadly clicked send and began to compose his resignation letter. As he began to write, he wondered why he should leave, since he had not been unfaithful. He was sure that Dr. Blunn would fire Larissa to keep him if he insisted. However, Trevor knew that Larissa would never leave Gradestone. He had followed her here because her entire family lived here. Most likely, she still lived in the same town. Besides, deep down, he still loved her, despite how angry and betrayed he felt. He definitely didn't want to be her husband anymore or live in the same town as her, but he didn't want her to be hurt. Trevor was surprised when Marjorie called him back. It had been less than 2 hours since they had spoken. He answered, hoping he would be able to hold his little girl in his arms. Hello. Trevor, what the hell is going on? Marjorie asked, sounding very upset. I told you what happened. Now you and Risa are not only the smartest people I know, but also the kindest and most trustworthy. Marjorie spoke slowly, trying to sound calm. So when you told me that ridiculous story about Risa cheating on you, I believed you because I knew you wouldn't accuse her of something like that and quit your job without a good reason. Thank you, Marjorie. That means a lot to me. I know how close you are to Risa, and I feel terrible for putting you in this position. You're not kidding, Marjorie muttered. I just spent over an hour talking to Risa, and her version of the story is so different from yours, it's unbelievable. She wants me to find out where you are so she can take you to the hospital because she's convinced that something is seriously wrong with you. She's terrified that whatever is wrong with you could kill you. Trevor sighed. And what's her version of that night? Larissa admits that she left the party to have sex in the upstairs bedroom, but she says it was you. What? She claims she was ovulating, so you talked her into going upstairs. She never mentioned to me that you were trying to have a baby again. How long have you been off birth control? Trevor exhaled sharply. Never. I had a vasectomy 5 years ago. I wanted more children then, but Larissa didn't. I would remember if I had reversed the procedure. I can show you the scar if you don't believe me. This doesn't make sense. None of your explanations make sense. One of you is clearly lying. Have you been drinking or taking anything? Marjorie, I have a video recording. Besides, I have at least 20 witnesses, including our boss, who can confirm that I didn't leave the party and that my wife was nowhere to be seen when my promotion was announced and I gave my speech. Marjorie felt like she was about to cry. Trevor, she sounded so confident. Maybe there's something wrong with her, especially since she's sure you got her pregnant and are leaving her to deal with it alone. I'll try to take her to see a doctor. Trevor sighed. I have to admit that Larissa has some health issues, which is more likely than her suddenly becoming so cruel and cheating on you. If that bastard did something to her. I know you asked me not to watch, but can you send me the video? I think Larissa needs to see why you left her. Marjorie, okay. Keep me posted. What she did hurt me more than anything I've ever been through, but I still love her and care about her. I will, Trevor, and try to see Joe as soon as possible. I'll try to arrange something for tomorrow evening. Later that evening, Trevor received a reply from Dr. Bloom. He expressed his condolences and said he was very surprised by Larissa's behavior, but confirmed that there had indeed been sex in one of the bedrooms of his home. He said he would most likely fire Larissa and Hunter for immoral behavior and asked Trevor to reconsider. Trevor replied that he appreciated the offer, but couldn't stay in the same city. Trevor was surprised by what Larissa had told Marjorie. How could she think it was him? He was almost a foot taller than McPhillip and probably 35 pounds lighter. Besides, their genitals were completely different. If she really thought that, maybe she was having a nervous breakdown after getting caught. Trevor began to worry that Larissa might not be a suitable mother if that was the case. He decided to contact Horace first thing in the morning. Trevor had never cried so hard in his life as he did during his visit to Joe's house, while the Beloys were out to dinner to give them some privacy. Despite Joe's prodding, Trevor never told her why he was leaving Larissa. Of course, Joe wasn't stupid. She already suspected that his mother had done something Trevor couldn't forgive. They were both wiping away tears when the Beloys returned. Only Marjorie came in. "Honey, Jeff and Tegan will take you home, okay? And you have Jeff's old phone so you can text and call your father between visits, okay?" Joe hugged her father tightly, then Marjorie, before leaving. "Thank you for the phone. I'll pay you back. And for everything. You've been great friends." Marjorie waved her hand dismissively. "You've always been good to us. Listen, I wanted to talk to you in person. I watched the video." Trevor grimaced. "I can't imagine how awful that must have been for you, but couldn't you have done something?" Marjorie paused and sighed. "You don't have to watch it, but listen to the video. If Larissa really thought she was having sex with you to get pregnant, would she have talked like that during sex?" "What?" "Trevor, I'm serious. I think there's something wrong with your wife." She sighed. "I'm still trying to get her to see a doctor because she really thinks she was with you. She won't name the guy, and everything she said makes sense to me if she thought it was you. Of course, you know better than me." "She couldn't have thought that. Maybe she's having a nervous breakdown after what happened, but that's after she cheated on you and got caught." "Trevor, I showed her the video. She got angry that I was accusing her of something terrible when the video clearly shows the two of you." "What?" "And she swears she just stopped taking the pills to get pregnant. She spent at least 20 minutes trying to find proof that she had been taking them before." "Marjorie, I talked to a lawyer about the possibility that there might be something wrong with Larissa that could put Joe in danger. Could you talk to social services so I can get temporary custody?" She sighed. "I'm very worried about her, but you're right. Joe's safety is more important than my friendship. Maybe this will convince her to seek medical help." Trevor returned to the motel and about 15 minutes after leaving their house, received a call from Marjorie. "Hello? Trevor, Jeff called an ambulance and the police. I'll let you know which hospital so you can meet us there," Marjorie said, crying. He felt sick. "What happened to Larissa?" "Trevor, she told Jeff and Joe when they got there that you and her had made up. She told Jeff in private that you spent almost the entire time we were watching Joe in bed with her. He checked her bed. I'm sorry, but—" Trevor shouted. "Make sure they took rape tests." Trevor had been at the hospital for a couple of hours when he received another video from McPhillip. He was about to delete it, but changed his mind and forwarded it to the officer in charge of the investigation instead. The next 2 days were a living nightmare. Like the entire previous week, nothing made sense. After numerous tests and psychological evaluations, Larissa showed no signs of trauma other than her assertion that she had had sex with Trevor, not McPhillip. Even when they watched the video, she insisted that it was consensual and with her husband. No one could find any explanation, although Larissa was kept under observation. McPhillip was questioned and admitted that he had had sex with Larissa 5 times in the past 3 weeks, swearing that it was consensual and for the purpose of procreation. All rational explanations were rejected, and the district attorney informed the police that without evidence that McPhillip was responsible for Larissa's delusions, he could not be charged. Trevor spent most of the week in the hospital. Of course, he returned home to care for Jo, who was distraught, fearing that her mother might die. Trevor received regular updates from the police, doctors, nurses, and even Marjorie, who visited Larissa regularly, but he still did not visit his wife. By that point, he had no doubt that Larissa had never intentionally cheated on him, but that didn't ease the pain of her betrayal. Finally, 6 days after Larissa was hospitalized, Trevor agreed to talk to her. The staff warned him not to accuse her of infidelity, as it would not be helpful. The fact that Larissa was about to be discharged played a big part in his decision to finally agree to talk. When he entered the room, she was sitting on the bed with her legs crossed, wearing yoga pants and a hospital gown. Larissa looked exhausted. Her hair was disheveled. She had no makeup on, and her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying for hours. "Trevor, I missed you so much. I can't tell you how hard it was without you," Larissa said quietly and reached out to hug him. Trevor just sat down on a chair a meter away from the bed, facing her, and said expressionlessly, "I missed you too. Trevor, I can't express how sorry I am. I know I betrayed you by sleeping with Hunter McPhillip twice. Maybe more, I don't know," she said quietly, staring at the floor. Trevor's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to say something. She stopped him with a wave of her hand. "It's not that I'm better. It's just that, given all the evidence, I know that the man I slept with in those days wasn't you. However, all my memories of those days are connected to you, and every time I see a video or screenshots from the video, I see you. I can't explain it, and it's really scary. All I know is that I really hate myself for what I did." When she started crying, Trevor stood up and sat down on a chair by the bed. She reached out her hand and he took it. "I know you've been talking to the doctors. I told them I wanted you to know everything, at least while you're still my husband. I also don't blame you for staying away. If I saw you doing this with someone else, I would feel like my heart was being torn apart. Trevor! Knowing how this hurts you and Jo is the hardest part of this, even harder than the fear that I'm losing my mind." "I don't think you're losing your mind," Trevor croaked. "McPhillip did something to you, I'm sure of it." "Me neither, but they can't figure out what it is. There are no drugs in my system. They don't think it's hypnosis because they've tried to hypnotize me several times. Even when I watch the video of them interrogating that smug bastard, I see him. That short, fat toad with Paisley." Trevor sighed and squeezed her hand. "Risa, when did you believe it wasn't me?" She wiped her eyes and shrugged. "When Jeff brought Jo home and she said you talked to her for almost an hour. That couldn't be true because you showed up about 15 minutes after she left and apologized for your strange behavior. We hugged and said we loved each other, and then we went to try to conceive a child. Jo would never lie about being with you. After the story you told Marjorie, which I was sure was a sign that you weren't yourself, I suddenly became afraid that it was me. I pulled Jeff aside and told him that I had spent most of the time while Jo was away with you, in an intimate relationship. He left for a minute, and when he came back, he said he was calling an ambulance and the police. I agreed. But the police said you thought you had sex with me even after you were hospitalized. I didn't believe that anymore, but they asked me why I had sex with McPhillip, and I told them the truth. After all, it looks like consensual sex on the video. I told them that he had tricked me somehow, but without any proof." Trevor sighed. "I know the district attorney spoke to me. His lawyer will argue that the video shows he had no reason to doubt your capacity to consent." "Yes, but there's something I definitely didn't consent to," Larissa said bitterly. I already told the doctors that if I'm pregnant, I want to have an abortion. They gave me a pill the day after I was brought in, but we won't know for sure for another week. I hope you don't mind. I know how you feel about abortion." Trevor shook his head. "I don't like it when it's used as a form of contraception. In situations like this, I think women should still have the right to choose." Larissa shifted slightly, feeling uncomfortable. "Trevor, could you close the door for a minute?" Trevor did as she asked and returned to his chair, moving it closer to the bed so he could reach her hand. "Okay, why do you want the door closed?" "I just wanted to check something. For my peace of mind." She smiled nervously. "You had a vasectomy, right?" "Of course, more than 5 years ago, so you could stop taking the pill." "And you have 2 scars, right? Please show me. I don't remember seeing them when you had the operation or when you stopped taking birth control. I only remember stopping the pills about 2 weeks before the party so I could get pregnant." "You still want to get pregnant?" Larissa smiled. "More than anything in the world. I have full-blown baby fever, but only for you. Trevor, I want to have your baby. Will you show me your scars?" Trevor shrugged, thinking it wasn't even that strange compared to the other things that had happened. He leaned forward and pulled down his jeans and boxers. "Why don't I remember this?" Larissa whispered softly. "I may be a little crazy right now, but I'm not stupid," Larissa said sadly. "I told you that I know how much I hurt you, and that our marriage is probably over. Expressing my love doesn't mean I expect us to be together when I leave here." "It's all very complicated," Trevor said, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Now that I know a little more, I would say that our marriage is in jeopardy, but not necessarily over." "I want you to stay home with Josephine," Larissa blurted out. "I'm not going back there." "What?" Larissa shrugged. "Until we find out what happened, I don't trust myself to be Joe's sole guardian. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't want to share a bed with you. One of the girls at work practically lives with her boyfriend, so her apartment is empty for weeks at a time. She agreed to put me up until we figure out what to do next." Trevor frowned. "I don't know if I can trust you when you're alone." "It's not far from college, so you and Marjorie will be close by to check on me." Larissa sighed. "I'm grateful you didn't tell my family about this. However, if it doesn't work out or they find out soon, I'll have to tell them, including what I did." "Larissa, I'd feel much better if you went home and I stayed in the guest room. Please, right now I'm much more concerned about your health than what you did." "Trevor, if that were the case, you would have come to me the first day I asked you." Larissa closed her eyes and waved her hand. "I'm sorry if that sounded accusatory. I don't blame you for anything. I'll spend the night at Ryan's, and we'll meet tomorrow and talk. How does that sound? I promise Marjorie and Ryan will keep an eye on me." Trevor sighed. "All right, let's do that." Larissa suddenly laughed coldly. When Trevor raised his eyebrows, she said, "It's just that I'm probably the only cheater in history who can honestly say, it's not what I think. You see, instead of making excuses to my husband by saying, it's not what you think." Trevor smiled weakly. "I understand, but it's not really funny when you explain it. Goodbye, Larissa. I love you. I never stopped." She started crying again. "I know that's why you're hurting. I love you too, Trevor Duncan. And I hate that you're going through this." Her mother's release did little to ease Joe's anxiety. The fact that her mother hadn't returned home convinced her that divorce was inevitable. She reacted by taking her anger out on her father. Trevor didn't punish her too harshly. He knew how hard it was for her. Trevor explained that he was going to meet with her mother the next day and promised to do everything he could to convince her to come home. Joe calmed down when he promised that he would stay home too. Joe talked to Larissa for an hour, but Trevor decided to wait until the next day, although he sent her a text message wishing her a good night. The decision to try to forgive Larissa and make up with her no longer seemed so difficult. What really bothered Trevor and gave him a headache was meeting McPhillip. That jerk wouldn't stand a chance in a fight. However, aside from the fact that McPhillip would be unlikely to press charges for assault, Trevor would have a hard time stopping himself. If Larissa remained ill and he ended up in jail for attempted murder or something worse, Joe would be left without parents. Trevor told himself that he was staying away from that bastard for his daughter's sake. The next day was Sunday, and the plan was for Marjorie to pick up Joe after her family went to church. Then Trevor would go to the apartment where he planned to take Larissa home. He decided he would even agree to share a bed with her to convince her, though he still felt uncomfortable about it. When he got to the apartment, Trevor knocked on the door, but no one answered. He knocked louder and then put his ear to the door. He was sure he could hear voices, including a woman screaming. He turned the handle and entered cautiously, in case Larissa had given him the wrong number. As soon as he stepped inside, Trevor heard the distinct sound of loud sex between two people. He walked down the hallway and saw them in the kitchen. Larissa was sitting on the kitchen table completely naked, with one leg on the table. McPhillips, also completely naked, was holding her other ankle in the air while standing on a 7-inch platform. "What the hell?" Trevor growled. McPhillips stopped thrusting and looked at Trevor with a genuinely alarmed expression. His already pale face turned even whiter. Larissa opened her eyes, looked Trevor straight in the eye, and screamed, Why are there two of you?" Trevor lunged forward to beat McPhillips, but slipped on a wet spot on the floor from the spilled pasta pot he hadn't noticed before. Sliding past the lovers, he grabbed McPhillips by the neck, but only caught the chain the fat man was wearing. Trevor accidentally tore off the chain with the pendant before falling heavily, hitting his shoulder on the corner of the stove. Larissa screamed again, but this time in terror. Then she squealed, "Let me go! Let go! What the hell is this?" She began to punch him, trying to move her legs to push him away. "Baby, it's me." "He's a fake," McPhillips said in a concerned tone. "I love you, not him." "Get away from me, whoever you are! Go away, Larissa continued to scream. Almost in slow motion, Trevor saw her reach for the dirty steak knife lying next to her. Then Larissa brought it up to McPhillips and plunged it straight into his throat, pulling the knife out immediately. Surprisingly, there was no blood, and McPhillips showed no reaction other than to open his eyes wide. The only sound was Larissa's screams as she plunged the knife into the side of his neck, and blood gushed from the wound. She pulled the knife out again, and McPhillip fell forward, his head at the level of her blood-covered groin, and there was blood everywhere, a lot of blood. Trevor managed to get up and shouted at her. Larissa continued stabbing McPhillip, screaming, until Trevor finally reached her and wrenched the bloody knife from her hands, but not before she had inflicted 2 deep cuts on his arm that required stitches. 2 years later, Trevor stood behind a 2-way mirror and watched his wife and daughter hug each other. Enough time had passed for both him and Joe to begin to accept that Larissa would probably never leave the psychiatric clinic. So far, there had been no change in her situation. When Trevor tried to visit her last month, she flew into a rage and accused him of being a werewolf who had come to seduce her. In fact, almost all adult men elicited this reaction from Larissa, even her father. Joe said that even when Larissa interacted with her daughter, it was like meeting a shadow of her mother, but not her mother herself. Although Trevor was sure she would have been found not guilty of self-defense, Larissa was never charged with McPhillips's murder because she was deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial. McPhillips had again installed video recording on his phone, but Trevor never watched the video because the police confiscated it as evidence. A few months after McPhillips's death, Trevor finally understood how his late colleague had done it. That day, it became clear that as soon as Trevor had ripped off the pendant, Larissa had seen McPhillips for who he really was. The shock of seeing him transform from Trevor into this toad completely threw Larissa off balance. On one side of the pendant was a drawing that looked like a salad, and on the other were 3 symbols. Around the top of the pendant, right where it connected to the chain, was a strand of hair that Trevor had confirmed through DNA testing with the help of his university friends as belonging to Larissa. Trevor suspected that the symbols were some kind of hieroglyphs. Dr. Tamara Wright from the history department confirmed that the 3 symbols represented Min, the Egyptian god of male power. The lettuce leaf was also one of his symbols. Knowing that McPhillips was a folklore enthusiast and a lazy man, Trevor paid the janitor to let him into his office. After half an hour of searching, he found a folder with a lot of information about the Mina pendant. According to legend, if a man wraps it in a woman's hair and smears it with blood, then whenever he wears it, the woman will see only the one she loves most and will feel an irresistible desire to conceive a child. Trevor remembered 5 instances when their trash cans had been rummaged through. The last time was 4 weeks before his promotion party. He decided it was raccoons and replaced the lids with locking ones. The realization that McPhillips was probably looking for Larissa's tampons made him feel slightly nauseous. Along with various versions of the legend, there were stories dating back to the early 1900s about women who had affairs with men they swore to consider their husbands. There were also several confessions from men who admitted to using the pendant to seduce someone. Trevor found a piece of paper with a phone number and the name Vicky among other documents. He called the number and found out that Vicky had been hired to sell a huge collection of artifacts belonging to a deceased collector. Trevor asked if he could send her a photo of the pendant. He emailed it to her while they were on the phone. Vicky confirmed that she had indeed sold the pendant to McPhillip, remembering it from Trevor's description. "Something happened, didn't it?" Vicky asked in an anxious voice. "Something ridiculous like supernatural? Or a curse? I'm so sorry, I didn't know when I started selling the collection." "Wait, you mean this isn't the only one?" Trevor asked in surprise. "Listen, I sold everything from my uncle's collection. My uncle, who I didn't even know existed until he died. No one warned me. And even if they had, I wouldn't have believed them. If you're calling to sue me or something, I've already spoken to a lawyer. And regardless of who deceived whom and what relationships ended, I bear no responsibility." She took a deep breath and spoke in a slower, calmer voice. "I have to go. Please destroy that pendant, for your own sake. I sincerely regret all the trouble it has caused you, and I hope no one was hurt. McPhillip is dead, and I've probably lost my wife forever. Isn't that serious enough?" Trevor said angrily, but she had already hung up and did not answer when he called back. For a while, Trevor wondered whether to tell Larissa about the chain, which would explain why she hadn't gone crazy when she cheated on him. However, if he hadn't witnessed what he saw, he would never have believed it if someone had told him about it. At that moment, it didn't matter anymore. About a year after Larissa was admitted to the psychiatric hospital, Trevor tried to see her at the pendant shop, hoping that it would change something. Unfortunately, it didn't help. His wife was completely calm and seemed genuinely happy to see him. Tears of happiness welled up in Trevor's eyes. Until Larissa said, "Gina, you're a bad bitch. Don't come here. If the guards catch us here again, they'll take away our TV privileges." Despite his protests, Larissa had already lifted her dress, exposing her breasts. Trevor quickly left that day with a broken heart. After thinking it over, he realized that his wife was not herself and could not be held responsible for her actions. However, he knew that his marriage was over. The visits became more for Joe than for him. One afternoon, after returning from a visit to Larissa, his daughter told him that she wanted him to find a girlfriend because she didn't like him being so lonely. Almost exactly 2 years after McPhillip's death, he finally mustered up the courage to invite a new young modern literature teacher out for coffee, feeling no guilt whatsoever. That coffee led to several more, and then to a difficult conversation with his daughter. Joe, who seemed to have aged 4 years in the last 2, hugged him tightly when he said everything he wanted to say. "Dad, just because I give you my blessing doesn't mean I don't think it's disgusting. Please don't do it in the house when I'm here. My real mom is dead, but if she were alive, she would understand. She would want you to be happy, and so do I." Trevor turned the page on a chapter of his life that had ended in a nightmare and began a new one with optimism. The end.